The Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California, presents a homily by our minister, the Reverend Dana Warsnop, titled Survival of the Friendliest, or The Snuggle for Survival, recorded on Sunday morning, July 12th, 2020.
Good morning. It is lovely to be back with you. I had a good couple of weeks of vacation and study leave, and I come back refreshed to you all. Good morning and welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. We are a storytelling, meaning making, learning, and growing community of resistance and resilience. I am the Reverend Dana Warsnop, minister of this evolving congregation. I am joined by a whole team of folks who collaborate to bring this service into being. Here is the lineup of our entire tech team. Today, our director is Brian Fortune, assistant director Kitty Merrill, magician Sue Brinkmeyer, and tech support with Joe Osborne. The on-screen people will introduce themselves as we go along. I do want to hold up a couple of announcements. Please add your pronouns to your name. This is so that we can be more gender inclusive of all the genders that we humans express. Also want to give you one last opportunity to fill out our needs and resources survey. It turns out that it was a good choice, it seems, for us to not plan on worshiping together for a good long while. And so we want to know what kinds of things you would like to see the church doing. What kinds of things would feed you in this time? How can we be together in virtual ways? And so there's an opportunity to tell us all about that on this survey. You can find the link on our website and on UUCV this week. And also want to hold up in this time when we're all home and the news just continues to be weird and awful in many ways, that we have the opportunity to do something, to make some changes. And there is an effort called UU the Vote. Information is in many places about this, and you can still make a donation to a matching grant that'll give us the resources to really make a difference. So I wanted to highlight those things for you all. Also, just wanting to remind you again to mute your microphones and stay muted unless you are in a breakout room. And lastly, Joe Osborne is our intrepid tech support guy. He's available by phone or by chat. He's going to post his number. It is so good to be together once again. Let us enter sacred space.
I am Worship Associate Krista Mendelson. We hope that everyone here has a chalice or a candle and something to light it with. Let's all light our chalices together.
Each Sunday, this congregation gives away our entire collection to organizations in the larger community or to funds that help people in our own church. And so we now are doing our donations online. You will see the link to donate on the next slide, and it'll also be posted in the chat as a direct link, and you can always find it on UUCV this week or on our website. Our offering today goes to Planned Parenthood to help provide for the reproductive health care needs of patients who lack insurance or other means to pay for services. Planned Parenthood has been working hard to procure personal protective equipment like masks to ensure that patients and staff can stay safe and healthy while visiting healthcare centers in these pandemic days. They have also increased their telehealth visits and allow patients to receive their birth control or other services through an online portal. A recent patient in Ventura wrote about they wrote in a post-service survey. Honestly, it was the best doctor's visit I have ever had. The doctor explained everything well and asked me several times if I had any questions. She also showed interest in making sure I was following up on issues that I had talked about in previous visits. I can't say how grateful I am that Planned Parenthood is open during this time. I don't know where I would have gotten the care I needed if it weren't there. So please, please give generously as you always do. I invite you now into a time of meditation. Settle into a comfortable position. Feel you're centered in your core and breathe. Imagine how it is you are connected to trees and to all of creation, a silent meditation. Change the narrative. Tell the story a little differently. Tell the whole story. That's what we keep hearing from justice activists. Because if it's only the victors who get to write the history, then what we call history can never be the whole truth. And yep, I'm using my share of air quotes today. History can never be the whole truth if it is only told by the winners. And worse, it is usually filled with self-serving stories that obscure or even silence so many truths and experiences. So for us to come closer to the truth, to tell the wholeness of something, we need to change the narrative. Because it's only when we know the whole story that justice can truly be done. And it's actually kind of cool that our pandemic disrupted times are giving us so many chances to get the whole story, which means that we are also hearing so many of those voices that have been silenced by the so-called victors. In many cases, silenced for centuries. Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species 160 years ago in 1859, speaking of centuries. And now that is a story that changed the world, that changed how we make sense of the earth and life upon it. And mostly, this has been for good. Mostly this has been a great good, although almost as soon as he wrote it, some used his theory of evolution in ways that actually are insidious, oppressive, even malicious. So these are some of the narratives that we still need to change. Fun fact, Darwin did not coin the phrase survival of the fittest. Rather, what Darwin talked about was natural selection and a concept of biological fitness, by which all he meant was the form of a species that will leave the most copies of itself in successive generations. Survival of the fittest was coined by 19th century sociologist and anthropologist Herbert Spencer, who had, I guess you'd say he had something of an agenda, so he did tell the story his way, and it changed Darwin's story. Just a little, it probably seemed at first. But before long, it gave rise to something called social Darwinism, which is a truly harmful and even malicious narrative. The one that says it's the most physically fit, the biggest, the strongest, the smartest of a species who will get all the best food, the best looking mates, and have, therefore, the most babies. Sound familiar? It is all over our culture now. And yet somehow no one told that to the sloth, or to the sloth moth, or to the sloth algae. It's a human narrative, and one that we yet can change. Perhaps the sloths and their companions can help teach us a new story. Sloths are indeed wonderfully, weirdly, almost magically fit for their environment and for making copies of themselves. It's not magic, of course, just evolution. And it's not really all that unusual, but it does have a kind of mystic harmony to it, doesn't it? So what if it's equally true that life on Earth is actually operating not solely on a principle of the survival of the fittest or even of the fit, but survival of the friendliest? So maybe it's the friendliest, the most cooperative, the best communicators out there who are the ones who have the best chances for survival. What if our lives are dictated more by how successful we are in the snuggle for survival? What if, isn't that snuggle just amazing? Okay, so what if we tell the story about life on Earth? What if the way that we have always told our story about life on Earth, at least since Darwin, that has set us up for struggle, more struggle than we need, and Struggle at what cost, ultimately, to what we would call our humanity? For social Darwinism, the one that says the fittest, the very best, are always the ones who survive, social Darwinism has excused all sorts of inhuman acts. If we can judge whole groups of people as evolutionarily inferior, we can justify all sorts of cruelty. And yet, it doesn't take much work to flip this narrative and find all sorts of evidence for the survival of the friendliest, which is the title of a new book by evolution scientists Vanessa Woods and Brian Hare. They tell us Darwin was constantly impressed with the kindness and cooperation he observed in nature, and he wrote, "Those communities which include the greatest number of the most sympathetic members would flourish and rear the greatest number of offspring." It seems that another way to win at evolution means maximizing the friendliest, maximizing friendliness so that cooperation flourishes. The authors go on, the idea of the survival of the fittest can make for a terrible survival strategy. Actually, research shows that being the biggest, strongest, and meanest animal can set you up for a lifetime of stress. Social stress saps your body's energy budget, leaving a weakened immune system and fewer offspring. This kind of fitness can lead to so-called alpha status, but it can also make your life nasty, brutish, and short. And we all need a stronger immune system these days. And so wouldn't you really rather snuggle than struggle? Now, the sloth does not play host to the sloth moth and all the other critters that can live on it. It doesn't play host out of an altruistic sense of hospitality. Yet it is an arrangement that works for both. And as such, this kind of cooperation is a great survival strategy. So, what of a new narrative based on cooperating with each other and with the earth to live our lives more harmoniously, more peacefully, more fruitfully for all the people? We do still have to look at the whole picture, just not just what we hope will be. And the truth is that competition and cooperation are at play in evolutionary forces and always will be. Yet evolution itself is not value-laden. So we need to see it. We need to resist the pull to see it all as cultural. We need to resist the pull to see it all as cutthroat competition, or as all daisies and butterflies, or all snuggling sloths. It's both, it's all of it. Another narrative becoming clearer in our time is that we cannot compete our way out of the messes that we are in. Just maybe we actually have the chance to become more aware of our place in this wildly interdependent web of evolution and creation. We can tell a different story and survive. In fact, we have to tell many different stories if we are going to survive, going to make it through. And it is growing clearer that our human capacities for cooperation, compassion, and mutual aid are an evolutionary strategy, an evolutionary advantage, a way to survive at the species level. Woods and Hare continue in their book. There was a time that our species, Homo sapiens, shared the planet with at least 4 other human species, some of which had brains that were as big as or bigger than our own. That's mind-blowing all by itself. And they go on, Homo sapiens survived because of what the authors call a cognitive superpower, a particular type of kindness called cooperative communication. We are experts at working together with other people, even strangers. We can communicate with somebody we've never met about a shared goal and work together to accomplish it. So it wasn't the size of our brains, just our friendly, cooperative inclination to play and work together. This gave us the friendly edge we needed to succeed as other human species went extinct. Even without the biggest brains, our sensitivity to others allowed us to cooperate and communicate in increasingly complex ways. We could innovate and share those innovations more rapidly than any other species. Yet, the full story here has to include our capacity for cruelty as well, for we can be incredibly cruel, especially to people we don't see as friends, like, say, just picking one example, the immigrants and their children who are in cages on our borders. Woods and Hare call humans both the most tolerant and the most merciless species on the planet. Which narrative do we need to survive years, decades ahead? Personally, I'm pulling for friendliness. For friendliness, for these 2 boys who are cooperating to stay dry and seem to be enjoying the moment. I'm pulling for those who know that it isn't the biggest brain and the strongest muscles that we need to survive, that we need to cooperate with one another, that we need to talk and listen and innovate together. I'm pulling for us, and I'm pulling for the trees that make the wood, that go into the instruments so that parents and children can sing together, so that we can sing together about dancing and life and loving and the beautiful, wondrous earth and our life. Singing together, doing all the things that needed to have us sing together, talk about cooperation. There is so much more for us to know about ourselves and about how the whole world works. So many stories yet untold about how we can cooperate and communicate, not just with each other, but with other species, maybe even the trees. What if trees can communicate with each other? What if they are actually trying to talk to us? Truth is, our scientists are learning to listen. And what if forests actually are self-aware? What if actually Gaia, the whole earth, is a living organism that is also somehow self-aware? Now, there are a couple of stories that changed the whole shebang. There's another whole perspective on life and living and time. Stories that we are just beginning to imagine. And if we are able to take ourselves as humans off of the apex of some imaginary and really very non-Darwinian evolutionary pyramid, maybe we can just grow in enough humility to understand how deeply we need each other. For we are all connected. We are, each and every one of us, a beam of light shining out, shining a golden thread, connecting ourselves to each other, connecting ourselves even to the trees who are trying to let us know something if we could slow down enough and learn to listen. Connecting us even to the sloth and the sloth moth and to the sloth algae, who also are finding a way to cooperate, maybe even to communicate. How does this all change the stories that you tell? The stories we all tell as a people and a species, the stories that you tell about your place on the earth among all these beautiful, tolerant, too often merciless, but capable of change and growth fellow humans. Let us grow in humility, in our capacity to wait and to listen and to learn and to grow, knowing that we are ever and always connected to it all, a tiny speck, part of the vastness of creation. Amen. And may it be so. Holy beingness of many names and no name, mystery beyond all naming, wildly interconnected, mystic harmony, spirit of life which dwells within and among and beyond us this day and always. May we feel our connections. May we feel rooted to the earth. May our roots communicate with all that is below ground. May our branches and leaves reach out to all that is above. May we slow down, may we listen, may we learn. May we listen to stories we've never heard before that bring us truths we never realized before. May our connections feel as grand as all the earth, and as tender and close as those dearest to us. May we hold in our hearts those we know who are suffering in isolation and loneliness. May we reach out to them. May we hold in our hearts, most especially, our dear friend, Rael Burke, who is approaching his final days with us on earth. And may we hold one another with kindness and love, with an embrace, with snuggles, virtual though they may be in these days. And may all those who are ill find healing. May those who are in despair find hope. May those who are without shelter find home. And may all those suffering conflict and war in the world, may they and we find peace. Amen and blessed be.
Please join Reverend Dana in extinguishing your chalice at home. We extinguish the chalice, but not the light in our hearts, the warmth of community, or the assurance and goodness we have found here. Those we carry into our lives until we gather again.
So I leave you with these words from Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one most adaptable to change. So let us change our narratives, the stories that we live by. Let us tell the stories of human capacity to communicate and care. May we tell the story that says it is the friendliest who survive. For when we change the narrative, we can change the world. Go forth in peace. Go forth in good health. Go forth in love. Go forth and be really friendly. May it be so.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Survival of the Friendliest, or the Snuggle for Survival, presented by the Reverend Dana Worsnop, recorded on July 12, 2020, for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California.